KCR and KTRs' refusal to condemn the violence exposes their real intentions. Violence of any kind, damaging the public and private properties, shall be condemnable by all responsible political parties cutting across their party ideologies. Endorsing such violent incidents or patronizing them by justifications is nothing short of irresponsibility and is a treason act. In this context, the Telangana Chief Minister K. Chandrasekhar Rao's decision to announce Rs 25 lakhs ex gratia and a government job to the person who died in police firing is a welcome move. But his reluctance to condemn the violence which claimed Rs 20 crore worth of loss to the Indian Railways is reprehensible. It also raises doubts over his party and his government's intentions. Had he condemned the incidents and appealed to the agitating so-called youth who wanted to become Agniveer to restrain from damaging the public and private properties, it would have been appreciated and given him the tag of political statesman. But he did not. As if this was not enough, his son, a well-educated and responsible minister in the state cabinet, aspiring to succeed his father K.T. Rama Rao, appears to be more vocal and made his inner happiness clear through a tweet endorsing the violence, stating that the centre has disappointed the young and aspiring youth to join the Indian Armed Forces. He too had not shown the maturity of a responsible citizen in condemning the violence. What does it convey? The ruling TRS party's national interests are above their personal and party body politics? Should the people appreciate such an act by the most charismatic leader like KCR and his learned son KTR? Does it not expose their fears of losing the ground from underneath based on the discreet reported surveys being conducted by their hired iPad headed by Prashant Kishore? Is it not that fear of growing anti-incumbency against his own party MLAs and government which is leading them to make such panic statements? Those who are unhappy with the Agnipath scheme of the centre could have come up with the constructive suggestions instead of adding fuel to the fire or making such provocative statements. What is more pathetic is that even the former State Congress chief and former Air Force officer like Captain Uttam Kumar Reddy are criticizing the scheme. Is it not its political compulsions that force him to condemn the scheme towing the party line? Contrary to the party stance, it's a senior erudite leader, no-nonsensical Manish Tiwari, who supports the scheme. Meanwhile, the Minister of the Home Affairs has announced 10% of reservations for Agniveers to get into paramilitary forces like Assam Rifles are assured. The Defence Minister had also increased the age limit of youth who wish to join under the Agnipath scheme in India's 3 armed forces from the outer limit of 23 to 26. The UP Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath too has assured of relocating some of the 75% rejected Agniveers into regular services after their short 4-year stint. All the other state governments should come forward and assure the youth who wish to qualify and get into armed forces that they too would be relocated into police and other allied services. Does it not mean cooperative federalism, which quite often many opposition parties, including the regional satraps, kept talking about to strengthen the initiatives taken up by the centre? Or their so-called corporate federalism is just confined to taking central funds without accountability or responsibility? One can understand the growing frustration of KCR, who has announced his decision to float a national party and fight the upcoming state elections in 2023 and the following year the general elections, as his party is on slippery ground with growing anti-incumbency. Added to that, if one has to believe media reports, his hired political strategist Prashant Kishore is also making no bones of people's anger against more than 50% of his sitting MLAs for their non-performance. Some reports even suggest KCR warning those non-performers may be axed and be replaced with new faces. How far the countrywide organized protests by the opposition, especially the decaying Congress, as well as some regional parties, which fear losing power this time around will succeed in their efforts. The country had witnessed many protests in the past, including one against CAA, blocked national highways skirting the national capital, year-long farm law protests, or the unwarranted controversy over the Gyan Vapi mosque row, disallowing Hindus to conduct prayers adjacent to the mosque, or now against the yet another most productive Agnipath scheme to strengthen the Indian army through this reform. In fact, the process of this reform had begun after the Kargil War, when the Indian Armed Forces realized the aging fight force and the need for young, energetic trained youth. Though these agitations, spearheaded and aided by hostile Western nations' backing, got fizzled out and could not help the opposition in any by-elections held in 5 states recently, such unrest is likely to continue as the Modi government is determined to bring in yet another revolutionary act, that is the Uniform Civil Code, in all probability in the upcoming winter session of the parliament. Will such protests help the aspiring opposition parties to bounce back in some states in the next few months, which goes to the polls, or boomerang on them while the ruling BJP-led NDA makes more gain than expected? This is MS Purthy for Orange News 9 TV.